You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 on Instagram and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 3 of the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. I'm excited to get on episode 3. Today, I'm with old friend from UMass, actually, a real estate attorney in New York City, Massimo. How you doing, Mas?
I'm doing well. Thanks a lot, Benny. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. It's good to have you. It's good to connect. And, I got to tell you, I'm really happy for you, man. You're a couple years younger than me at UMass, and you've really done some awesome things for yourself in the legal profession. And, I'm really psyched to have you on the Lawyer Stories podcast. So thanks for coming on.
Of course. It's my pleasure. And, we go way back and, to the start of it, basically at UMass. And now, we're both lawyers, both doing real estate stuff, doing a lot of interesting things with the law. And we're really happy for you, too, that Lawyer Stories is taking off. I couldn't be more happy for you.
Thank you. I appreciate those kind words. So tell us, Massimo, what led you to become a lawyer? As you know, on Lawyer Stories, we talk about inspirations, challenges, motivations to become an attorney. And for everybody listening out there, you could check out the Instagram page at lawyer_stories. And then on Facebook, we're Lawyer Stories. We have a nice community there. It's just a growing community. We have a website, thelawyerstories.com. We also recently launched a YouTube page where we're going to be putting our podcasts along on Spotify and some other platforms. But so Massimo, tell us all what led you to become an attorney, and when did you know you wanted to become a lawyer?
It's interesting. I always wanted to be a lawyer. I feel from when I was pretty small. Even my parents told me when I was 8 or 9 years old, I was talking about being a lawyer. I always liked to argue. And I had several family members and acquaintances who were lawyers growing up. And I always asked them, should I be a lawyer? I'm really interested in doing what you do. Do you go to court? Do you argue? And it's funny because you when you ask a lot of lawyers that have been in practice for, 10, 20 years plus, you tend to get a negative response a lot of times. And they try to dissuade you from going to law school. And I got that, but, I unfortunately was never any good at math. So becoming a lawyer was sort of a natural path for me.
Yeah.
I was always good at history courses and literature. I was in, AP and honors courses in those particular subjects, but math was never my strong suit. Sciences as well were sort of, at the bottom for me. So
I feel that.
So, being a lawyer was a natural consequence. I took this one class in high school. It was an honors course called Institute for Political Law and Education. And we would argue about issues, pertinent legal issues like abortion, gun control, and each team would take different sides. And ultimately, we were selected out of a round of other high schools in New Jersey to represent the state of New Jersey at this We the People tournament, which I did my senior year of high school in Washington, D.C. in the Senate Judiciary Committee. And I was on a team. Yeah, it was a very, very cool experience, being a high school student, standing, with these judges that are perched up in the Senate Judiciary room. It was quite intimidating. And I was awestruck. But as soon as I started arguing my positions, I knew right then and there that the dreams that I had when I was a small child growing up came to fruition, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a lawyer.
So it just felt right. It just felt right. Like you're standing in this room. It's like this noble this room with this atmosphere, the Senate Judiciary Committee, and you just hit you, and it kind of felt right. You're like, this is what I need to do.
That's exactly it. Hit it right on the head. And I said, standing there, this is me. This is my thing. I want to be a litigator. Not any type of law in particular, but actually a litigator. I want to be arguing cases. I want to be before judges, doing depositions, trials. Not transactional. So even though I do some transactional work, but that was going to be my bread and butter.
Right.
Being a litigator.
Do you think this is sort of an off side question? Do you think the Socratic method in law school prepares you to be a litigator? Like when they call on you cold, when you're sitting there? That was like one of my least favorite parts of law school. Even though I would do the reading and do the studying, just getting called on,
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny that you say that because and interestingly enough, I met my wife in law school. She's also a lawyer.
Yep.
And she always tells a story to, family and friends that she remembers me on like the second day of law school in torts class. And, my school did the Socratic method too, although I think some schools are slowly doing away with it. But I got up and with a couple of my friends who were in line with me, it was a firing squad. The professor called on me. I was the first one to go, started, asking me questions about minute details and facts of the case. In terms of, how good it is, I don't really think there's any benefit from doing the Socratic method. I don't think it helps tremendously, to be quite frank.
Yeah.
What I do think actually in law school, and I've given this some thought, and that they don't do is when I got out of law school, I wasn't prepared for the procedural stuff. Like I didn't know what a notice of motion was, or an affirmation, or a declaration if you're in federal court, in support of your motion. I didn't know those basic rudimentary, procedural elements that go into the practice of law. So I would, if I was a dean of a law school, I'd put a lot more focus on those, on those aspects. Instead of the Socratic method,
like practical aspects, like you see with med school, like they're all doing those little rotations and everything like that. Like, I guess there is opportunity to do practical things in law school, but I don't think, hindsight's 2020. Like, obviously, I don't regret anything, but it would have been nice to get involved more and learn things from a practical.
No, you're absolutely right, and I think the analogy to a doctor is spot on because as a doctor, you're going through a lot more schooling, right? You have an extra 3 years of clinical study.
Right.
So you're actually, as a doctor, during that clinical period, you're hands on deck. You're doing the work, and you're being a doctor before you actually become one. Same thing in law school.
Right.
Except in law school, you don't get that. You don't get that same clinical experience. Yeah, you might do an externship or an internship for a semester, but you're not getting that hands-on experience like you were in the medical field.
Right. I think, I think that's absolutely right. I think we should have to do it. I think there should be, a certain number of credits that we have to get, by working for someone or going into a field that we foresee ourselves going into. But, as for the Socratic method, to go back there, I think I remember being in civil procedure and the professor was questioning people on the side of the room. And then she sort of turned around and was like, "Mr. Gold." And I just was totally, I thought my day wasn't coming since she was on the other side of the room. And I think I spit out a mint in the front of the class because I was so surprised that she had called on me. But anyway, that was kind of a little embarrassing moment. But I think the girl next to me only saw that, so not a big deal. Anyway.
Well, that's and just going, taking that point a little further, that's what I think a lot of the Socratic method has become. A lot of these professors in law school are using it as, almost as a form of intimidation instead of a learning tool. So, that's exactly right. So
Right. So you told us about your experience being in high school, and having that sort of that moment where you knew you wanted to be an attorney. So take me through, what did you do at UMass to prepare for that? Did you take any particular classes? What was your major there?
Yeah, I majored in political science. So, same vein that my concentration and interest in studies that I had in high school, I pursued at UMass, and UMass had a very good political science program. So I focused mostly on the political science courses, history courses, European studies. I studied all of the governments of Europe.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So
did you ever do any legal studies? That was my major. I loved legal studies at UMass.
I did not do any legal studies while at UMass. So my
Okay.
concentration and my major was in political science.
Got it. So, okay, so then you decided you wanted to go to law school, or I mean, you decided in high school, so you took classes that would sort of prepare you, and
Right. But in college, in terms of preparation, I did a lot, a tremendous amount of study on the Federalist Papers, on our Constitution. So, the legal issues that we deal with every day as lawyers were intertwined in my classes.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. So like tell us about your current position and your primary field of practice now. Like, where did that bring you? Like, what are you doing current day in New York?
Sure. So I'm a partner at a law firm called Adam Lightman Bailey PC. It's a well-known real estate litigation firm here in Manhattan. And the firm concentrates on anything real estate, anything having to do with real estate we handle. We're in the press a lot. I publish a lot of articles for the New York Law Journal on legal trends affecting real estate, new developments in the law. We're part of some of the biggest cases involving real estate in Manhattan, and it runs the gamut from doing transactional work, drafting and preparing commercial leases on the transactional side, closings both residential and commercial, and then litigation, again running the whole gamut from construction, condo, co-op defect cases to adverse possession cases.
Really, you've had adverse possession cases?
Yeah. Yes.
That's pretty interesting. So like that's a principle in law that you feel like would be really rare to prove, right?
Yes.
Elements. I mean.
Yes, but it happens quite frequently in Manhattan because you have these buildings and these property lines that are all abutting each other, and living within such close quarters. So. If somebody erects, let's say, a shed, or even if it's for temporary construction, but stays there for a while. So and a big thing too is party wall. There's actually a whole party wall law in New York, which is fairly interesting. The party walls are the walls that adjoin both buildings that are adjacent to each other, and are the structures that hold up and help with stability of the building. And New York law says that one owner can build on the top of that wall, even though the entire circumference does not, the ownership lies right in the middle of the party wall line. Despite that, the law allows you to use the whole circumference of the wall to encroach on what would be the close of your neighbor's property to build up, so long as you don't impede the structural ability of the wall and don't impede the other owner's ability to use it in the future.
Wow. Okay. That's some interesting stuff about adverse possession and property law. I'm sure it's pretty complicated in New York.
Yeah, and it's pretty commonplace. Also, RP, APL 881 cases where you're trying to do a development, again, because the properties are so closely held together in New York, you need to actually bring an action in order to get access when you're doing development, demolition, construction, or otherwise, because you need to erect safety barriers on the other person's property, on your next door neighbor's property, to protect from falling bricks and things of that nature. So it's there's a tremendous amount of the practice that's involved because the properties are so close together.
Right. Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense. So, all right. So your current position, you're a partner at a well-known law firm, property law attorney in Manhattan. So like, what do you like most about what you're doing there?
The things that I like most are developing the law, helping to develop and educate people in the legal community on what the law means. There's been actually in New York, the rent laws were just changed on June 14th of 2019, and they were sweeping changes to the rent regulated tenancies in New York. There's about 1 million of them left, either rent stabilized, most of them are rent stabilized 99%, or rent controlled. And effectively, the new law does not allow owners to deregulate those apartments. Under the prior law, when you had a vacancy and you made certain improvements and met a monetary threshold, those apartments could be deregulated. And you can then go free market. So conceivably, an apartment that was renting for a couple $100 a month, depending on the area it's in, can go to lease for 4, 5, 6,000, even more. The sky's the limit.
Yeah.
Again, in terms of the neighborhood you're in. So
right.
It's been a pretty big deterrent for that, and a big blow to landlords. Also, the legislatures changed the rental overcharge laws, and what they did was they extended the entire period that a tenant can now review the rental history. Under the old law, tenants could only go back 7 years. They could only require landlords to provide 7 years of documentation to substantiate rental increases on an annual basis. Now, they ripped that old law up and said that landlords have to produce those documents from the beginning of time. So, nobody has those records from the beginning of time. So
right.
It's really crippled the sale of purchase and sale of rent regulated buildings in the city. In fact, when the new law passed, all property values in Manhattan that were subject to rent regulated tenancies dropped 25% overnight. So
really?
Yeah, as you can imagine, the economic effects of this new legislation, although they have not yet been completely foretold, many people think that we're going to have a cataclysmic effect because of this. So it's an interesting time to be a lawyer, especially a real estate lawyer in New York right now, because we are in utter chaos. And people often say that chaos is always good for lawyers, right? It creates more
right.
work.
Well, I mean, that's what you say you like doing, is sort of trying to establish new law, and so that
right.
That's.
So I was fortunate enough when I was the first job I was working for a small firm in New Jersey, and it was at the time of these foreclosure rescue scams, the 2008 recession period, and I was representing a couple from Mexico, Spanish-speaking clients who were duped into this foreclosure rescue scheme where they deeded their property to an LLC that was supposed to, save them from foreclosure, when in fact they turned around and claimed ownership over the property. So I brought suit under the New Jersey Consumer Fraud Act and was successful in showing the court in Newark that we had a high level of success to win based on the mortgage fraudsters scam. And I was able to get interim attorney's fees granted under the New Jersey Consumer Fraud Act, which had never been granted before. It was a case of first impression. Yeah, so I made the front page of the New Jersey Law Journal, which was a very proud accomplishment for me. And more recently, I made the front page of the New York Law Journal for taking down the largest illegal hotel operation that New York City's ever seen.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. I think I saw your face pop up on social media, on LinkedIn, about that. You got a lot of views on LinkedIn. That was quite an accomplishment. That was actually my next question about your most proud accomplishments. So that's obviously one of them. Is that case ongoing?
So the case is it was resolved. I worked very closely with the Attorney General's office and the Mayor's Office of Special Enforcement, and I did a copious review of all of the transaction history and was able to piece together the puzzle, this intricate, illegal hotel puzzle, and which led ultimately to the biggest raid ever in New York City for illegal short-term rentals, which are rentals for less than 30 days in the city of New York. That's now deemed illegal, and you're hit with considerable penalties as an owner if you're found to be violating this law. And as a consequence of that raid, the hotel, the illegal hotel, was shut down. So,
Wow.
it basically solved the case without any formal litigation.
Wow. Okay. That's quite impressive. So what else? Like, is there anything else that you wanted to mention about some big accomplishments that you've had?
Yeah, the other big accomplishments that it's funny because we were talking earlier about getting out of law school and preparation, et cetera. Because when you get out, you're not prepared, certainly in terms of the procedural aspects of civil practice. So it was funny. It was I was probably a year in my first year as a lawyer. The partner comes into my office with 5 Redwells and drops them on my desk and says, Massimo, you're doing this appeal.
5
Meanwhile,
Redmos?
5 Redwells.
Redwells.
Yeah.
Okay.
Redwells are the files that we
Got it.
They're called Redwells because they're red, but they're huge, files.
Okay.
That we hold all the pertinent file materials in. So he drops them down on my desk, says, Massimo, you're doing the appeal. So I'd never done an appeal before. I'd always liked writing. I excelled at legal writing in law school. And it was a very discrete issue. It was a woman who was pregnant. She was working for a small doctor's office in Brooklyn, and she was improperly terminated. We believe that she was improperly terminated based on her pregnancy.
Okay.
But the whole issue in the case was whether or not the employer was considered to be a covered employer under the New York human rights law, which is what we were suing under. And the mother-in-law of the doctor was held to not be an employee, so that he was not considered covered. I found a tremendous amount of case law and analyzed and correlated other statutes on the meaning of a family member. And based on the plain meaning of those statutes, I brought it in connection with our case and argued that the doctor certainly was a covered employer. The mother-in-law was, part of his family for purposes of statutory interpretation. And the appellate division agreed with me. But, it was a great experience because
Wow.
I was completely thrown into the fire. Not even a year out, and I'm arguing in front of the appellate division second department on this major appeal, which I ended up winning. So,
Right.
And I've done a host of other appeals after that, both in New York and New Jersey. I had another, big one based on a mall. I did a lot of work for the Simon Property Group. They're one of the biggest, actually one of the biggest landholders in the world, but domestically they're the largest retail operator. They own most of the malls in the country.
Yep.
And did a big appeal also on a guarantee. The lawyer on the other side came up with a novel theory. I was suing a retail shop that sold women's clothes in one of the malls, and there was a guarantee. There was a lease and a guarantee. And the guarantee, however, was executed after certain business terms of the lease were changed. So in other words, an original lease was signed, the parties further negotiated, increased the terms of the rent, and then the guarantee was signed. So the lawyer on the other side argued that the guarantee was want. They say want for lack of consideration. It wasn't supported by proper consideration.
Really?
So I found one case. Yeah, I found one case, Chase Manhattan Bank, which I argued on the appeal, which was directly on point. That said, it didn't matter that the guarantee was signed subsequently, or that the parties engaged in additional negotiations following the execution of the guarantee on the business terms, because the tenant took possession anyway after that and operated. So that brings the guarantee into effective status. So that was a very big win as well. And I've had, several others.
All right. Cool, man. That's awesome.
So yeah, those are the accomplishments really. When you're developing the law, you're helping to, formulate new legal theories and advance new law. That to me, makes me proudest as a lawyer.
Yep, absolutely. I've always thought jurisprudence and developing laws and, trying to argue your case based on other cases and one of the most interesting points of the law. That's probably why I started reading case law early on before I went to law school. But Moss, we got to wrap things up here. So how would you want everybody to get a hold of you? Whoever out there.
The best way to get a hold of me is to friend me on LinkedIn. We can put my email we can attach it to the podcast so that people can communicate with me directly, especially if they have any real estate issues in or around the New York City area.
Okay.
Happy to help. Happy to answer people's questions also about the practice, the practicalities, etc.
Very good. Sounds great.
I love teaching. I love teaching the law. That's why I like to publish and write on it as well.
Yeah, I could definitely tell your passion by just the way you speak about your cases, and I'm very glad for you that you found something that you're passionate about, and that you're for knowing you for so long, old friend since UMass. Very happy for you that you've made such a good life for yourself. So
yeah, you too. It feels like yesterday that I remember walking down Fearing Street with you, talking about going to law school and becoming lawyers.
Yeah.
So it's come full circle.
Here we are, doing a podcast, which back then we wouldn't have had a clue what this is, but
right, exactly.
Now we know what it is. So
that's right.
All right, man. Well, we gotta wrap it up. So thanks again for coming on. We appreciate it. It's been a good time.
Pleasure. My pleasure.
Hope we can meet up soon, maybe sometime in New York, or if you're ever in Mass, it'd be cool to hang out.
For sure.
But is there anything else you want to say in the last couple seconds, in a minute, or
for all those lawyers out there, if you're having doubts about being a lawyer, becoming a lawyer, don't doubt yourself. Keep going. Always push, and strive for greatness.
Awesome. I love it. Thanks for coming on episode 3. Everybody out there, wherever you are in the world today, enjoy yourselves.
Make it happen.
The Lawyer Stories podcast is produced by Rhino Girl Media and Marketing the Law. Are you looking at your social presence every day? Potential clients are. Learn how to magnetize your brand with the help of Marketing the Law. Find us on Instagram at Marketing the Law to learn more.